Response video to a couple of videos by Pizza Boy on the interesting subject of anthropology. Of course, he had to dumb it down. Had to pointlessly throw in the subject of race and sex. Just stupid, like men against women. Like we got to go back to that subject somehow. But anyway, one of his premises is this some sort of argument that might exist between the importance of specific individuals in human history and whether everything just hinges on the existence of these individuals, or whether progress sort of has its own evolution and that has benchmarks, or whatever you want to call them, that it will achieve if it survives long enough. And I think it's just it's quite obvious. Look, it's a deterministic universe. Before Einstein was a cause of change, he was an effect. Okay, the culture educated him. The acquired knowledge of hundreds of thousands of years before him created Einstein and created the potential that his brain had. And he just put the A's, the B's, the C's together and made the next contribution in the progress of understanding and our knowledge base. And like with every other invention, yes, it's likely it would have been accomplished eventually. We don't know, you change little circumstances and you change our evolution by hundreds or thousands of years. If the advisors to the pharaohs had been a little bit wiser, maybe from a different country, maybe from Alexandria or some other place, and they had maybe suggested, well, it's a stupid waste of perfectly good slaves to build dopey pyramids, and maybe you should work on canals and infrastructure, and maybe we should get rid of these astrologers and get ourselves some real scientists to do some experiments, because all this metal stuff is really interesting and there's all kinds of properties, and we got all this sand, and I just have this feeling that somehow this silicone is going to be worth something someday. Silicon. So who knows? We could have had a personal computer 2,000 years ago. So yeah, the evolution of knowledge can be affected by individuals, but the bottom line is that the course we were on is the course we were on. Einstein was inevitable by our Big Bang, start of the universe, everything in motion kind of thing, and he was going to happen, and there was nothing going to, that's just the way it is. The script was written, and he played his part, and I playing my part, you're playing your part. We're all just playing out our existence. We're not creating our existence. We're players, okay? We're not writers. So I mean, I'm not saying it's reason to degrade individual contribution, but you do have to understand it in that context, that yes, we would have invented the round wheel. It was going to happen, and whether Ugg or Org invented it doesn't really make a difference. The only fact that matters is that we reached a stage of progress that facilitated potential and gave us the ability to, live maybe more productive and comfortable lives. And that's the end game of all this crap. But human knowledge is evolving. That's what it does. It evolves, but it's a different kind of evolution. Memes they don't evolve through biological process. They evolve through a transfer between people, a communication that takes place. That's the sex of the evolution of philosophy and understanding, and that's how it changes through civilization. This is how well it's communicated, what words it's consolidated into as it passes through each one of us and gets modified and changed and improved and unimproved, or however you want to look at it. But it's a different kind of evolution, and instead of natural selection, instead of some kind of competitive environment, where there's a little bit of that going on, there's a little bit of that, what ideas are tastiest or smell the best, right? We judge things very superficially, and we say, well, that idea smells better than that idea. and we don't really we don't judge them completely for the substance, what's at the core of it, what's it really made out of. And so there's some of that takes place, and so that's how you get religion, because it's comforting and simple. God did it, it just solves all the problems. God says so, you don't have to explain anything anymore. But it's cotton candy, it's not real food. It's not knowledge. And but the other catch is that we have an innately rational mind. Through our physical evolution, we acquired this faculty of reasoning that some other animals have, and the whole point of it was for us to accurately symbolize and represent our environment in our heads. The point wasn't to do it inaccurately. So there's a disposition of our intellects, or our brains, our consciousness, is to be reasonable, be rational, be logical, to accurately understand what we're observing, because illusions and delusions aren't going to be of much use in most cases. So the good news is that as this evolution keeps taking place, as these memes keep spiraling through time, and we gain more knowledge and gain more knowledge, there's a certain end, and the end is this thing called the truth. And we're realizing over the last 200 years we've learned tremendous amounts of information, and so we can kind of see it. We can analyze our own psychology, and we can understand what we're made of, where we came from, and where we're going. And the downside of that is that it becomes more and more obvious how this evolution doesn't really have anywhere to go. The name of the game is this thing called satisfaction. That's what we're chasing, and civilization is just another way of saying, well, satisfaction for as many people as possible. That's the objective. Weed out as much harm and pain as possible, and do the best you can for the organisms involved in the system. And so even as that evolves, there's a natural tendency to just become more efficient in the end. And so we'll have our dark ages, but the end game is going to be this accurate truth that we're going to live by. And eventually, I think the human race is going to be stuck in a rather unpleasant position of realizing that our nature doesn't really provide any purpose. The game is the potato chip. The game is the hunk of cheese. The game is the piece of ass. And that's the game. I mean, we're crude beasties. We're just little consuming and reproducing machines with elaborate psychologies. But that's it. I mean, we're a complex soap opera built on a crayon drawing. There's no substance at the core of this game. It's just a futile and pointless chase of a desire that never needed to exist. And so that's where it gets really complex. Is if you try to expand our progress up a few hundred years, if we were to survive and not kill ourselves, which seems the more likely inevitability, we're just going to be stuck with kind of what we need another ingredient for the special sauce. I mean, what are you going to accomplish? There's nothing to accomplish. Just finding more elaborate and kinky ways to gain our satisfaction. The perfect butt plug. I mean, come on, we're really not going anywhere as a civilization. But anyway, it's the journey, right? And we're caught in the middle of that. And to even get to that future, we have to make sure we can get there. We have to take a lot of these. There's these brick walls that we're heading for, and it doesn't seem like human beings are very much interested in preventing hitting them. And so, there's a lot of doom out there. And so looking back, and so anyway, let's just get to the stupider remarks he made. He pointed out, for no purpose whatsoever, there's no matriarchal civilizations in human history. Well, there certainly have been tribes that have been pretty well controlled by women. Even the Hawaiians, I mean, they did have female emperors. So, that's sort of an exaggeration or perversion of the truth. And the fact is that that's a legacy problem again. So, it doesn't, obviously through this evolution process, you can't get rid of all the legacies. And so if you start off with the might makes right, the brutal male society, yeah, it's going to take a while, even when you become, more civilized, to get rid of that legacy. Okay, the legacy still lives, and it's only through thousands of years that we finally gotten to the point. It took, just a couple hundred years ago, we still didn't do what's right, and so that legacy, we're still living with that legacy. But we know that's the game. I mean, the reason why women are in some sort of different or inferior position is because of the legacy. And that's rapidly changing too, just because of the system and the fact that they're starting to inherit an awful lot of money, which is making them very powerful. But again, the downside of that is the women who end up on that side of the scale are usually Leona Helmsley or something, some woman who really isn't a woman. So that's the catch-22 scenario of the whole thing, is that there's no point in women being empowered if they've taken all their lessons from stupid men who threw virgins into the fucking volcano. I mean, in a sense, we might end up breeding women who are just as fucktarded, and so they'll just be throwing the young male virgins into the fucking volcano. It's a game of memes. That's a Dawkins word. This idea thing, this concept thing that we pass to each other, this understanding, this knowledge, and we have a lot of bad knowledge in our heads. Our psychologies are full of bullshit, and we really have to get past all that nonsense. So anyway, fuck that crap. Fuck that, whatever it is, that chauvinistic attitude. Men have advantage merely because 10,000 years ago they were bigger than women, and that's it. It's not any more complicated than that. So moving on to the next part, which was he had to bring up race and say there's no real races, and he's sort of arguing almost like he's not somebody who's fixated on this kind of crap. And so I don't know where he was going with it, but it's as soon as it's like the fox, talking about the liberation of the chickens. Yeah, let's liberate the chickens, let's free the chickens. There's a reason a fox would be saying that, right? I mean, he doesn't really care about the chickens. He just wants to get them in a position where then he can whack their heads off. So I call bullshit. Whatever he's up to there, fuck you. You're the wrong person to be talking about any non-existence of races, because you seem pretty fucking fixated on these irrelevancies of human identity. So I guess that's enough. There is more. Let me just throw in the more. What the hell? Because there's all kinds of ideas that people need to understand. All right, so this is a theory I developed. Okay, I think I'm the only person who developed it. Okay, I never heard it ever before. But anyway, we acquired our current intelligence, our current capacity, somewhere between 70 and 250,000 years ago. And it's connected to verbal skills. And I won't go into the whole point of how we know what we know, just because of genetics and how this tribe 70,000 years ago of people, we can basically trace the rest of Europe and Australia, the rest of the human race, we can basically trace to that tribe genetically. All right, and that tribe is basically still living the same life they used to live in Africa. Okay, still making bone tools, still doing all the stuff the old way, but they're obviously quite capable. You take one of them and put them in a regular grammar school, they'll be just as intelligent as you or I, but in their tribe they still have a very crude language of just clicks and noises and blah blah blah, 50 words. I mean, it's very simple. So here you have an organism that acquired a capacity. All right, so just think of who we were even 10,000 years ago, what an idiot we were, but we had this huge potential, and that was we could use it. All we needed was a teacher. All we needed was somebody to tell us the truth, and we could understand the truth, and we didn't have that. And so here's the one organism that's acquired high intelligence in the 4 billion years of evolution of life on Earth. And the only way it acquired it is almost through this backdoor way, because there was some subtle change that opened a huge capacity. And that's very rare in evolution. Evolution's usually little tiny changes, and it takes a long time, like to evolve an eyeball or something. And it's not until you've built the whole thing that you really gain that potential. And so we had these thinking brains, this mammal brain, but the only way it really got liberated was because some kind of change took place that had an immediate, some sort of value, because natural selection said yes to it. So it somehow made us more intelligent. But we didn't release the whole, not even a 1/100th of the potential of that intelligence. And to be able to retain that capacity through, you know, thousands of years of evolution without losing it before we exploited it is a very unique and strange circumstance. And so this thing of us even being intelligent organisms is probably, you know, might have been one of the many very improbable events in our history. Because you have to say to yourself, when you see organisms, like I say, a dragonfly, been around 350 million years or something, why didn't it ever acquire intelligence? And the simple answer is because it didn't need it. Okay, organisms don't need to be intelligent. Okay, their mission is food and sex. There's nothing else to the machine's game. That's the end game for the biology. That's all the DNA molecule cares about, is building a machine that eats and has sex. I mean, it's reproduction. And all the rest of this stuff is just add-on crap. And so it's not going to be here unless it somehow doesn't have a negative effect, or somehow doesn't pervert that simple purpose of consumption and reproduction. And so, I mean, it's something to, it gives you some perspective that it is not the natural tendency, it's not nature's design, it's not an inevitability of the natural selection process to select for high intelligence. All it selects for is slight advantages in an organism's capacity to exploit an environment, and you don't need intelligence for that. You don't need high intelligence for that. And so we really are the aberrant. We're not conforming to nature. And the stranger, even stranger irony is that this faculty of high intelligence hasn't even been tested really by natural selection, because it seems quite probable that we will exterminate it, and in doing so it will be basically selected out. It will be an evolutionary aberration that is found to be pointless, because it destroys organisms in the end, because they can't contain the power the intelligence gives them. They don't have enough intelligence to control the intelligence. Yeah, that's pretty profound, right? Yeah, I like it. All right, anyway, I rambled on. Sorry. So, enough of that 453-minute video.